What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Chaos. My name is Vlad the-tek, and today we're gonna have one of those last week in prison videos. Well, I still wasn't in prison, but yeah. So I did learn a bunch of really interesting stuff, both about the prison and about some of the people that I might be working around. And we also got hit with some bad news in the week, so there's that to go over. Well, without further ado, I guess we should just get to it. So one of the first things we actually talked about was everyone's favorite, use of force. Everyone's probably gonna have a lot of questions on that one. Like, what exactly are you allowed to do inside a prison to defend yourself? And when does force become excessive? These are all very important things to talk about. By the way, I should say this is for entertainment and educational purposes only. I'm not advising using force on anyone. Find an instructor or something if you actually want to know how to defend yourself. I am not that instructor. So there was a couple of days actually spent on use of force specifically. And the whole reason behind that is to kind of educate you about, landmark cases that involve a use of force and when use of force becomes excessive, as well as some really horrendous stuff. And we also talked about riots and stuff like that happening inside of prisons. First thing I'm going to start with is use of force, because use of force isn't just used in physical altercations. It's actually considered a use of force before it even gets to that level. For those of you not in the know, there are seven different levels of force. The first three don't actually require you to hurt somebody, and those are the three they tell you to start with every time. That's psychological, verbal, and soft open hand. Well, not soft open hand, soft empty hand. We're going to talk about those three because the other ones are kind of self-explanatory, except for one, and I will talk about that soon. The reason why they tell you to use psychological verbal first is because you want to use the law actually specifically says you use the least amount of force necessary to gain or maintain control over a situation. In other words, you probably shouldn't shoot people if you don't have to. This is why we spend a long-ass time on use of force. So with psychological, basically all you're doing is playing mind games with somebody. You don't even have to use words for it to be considered a psychological use of force. Like, for instance, if you see two offenders and they're looking around and they're like trying to see if anyone's going to catch them, passing some powdered sugar around their cell. A correctional officer just showing up, arms crossed, looking at him. That's a psychological use of force. Next one is kind of self-explanatory. Verbal would be the equivalent of the officer then going, "What are you guys doing? You need to drop whatever's in your hands on the ground right now and turn around." The next one is soft empty hand. This one is basically putting hands on somebody, in this case an offender, who is compliant. In other words, it's the equivalent of just putting your hands on somebody's shoulder and guiding them around, or their arm and guiding them around a place and letting them know where to go. This will be something used in, let's say, an offender who has been restrained, who you are walking to a different part of this facility for whatever reason. That's called a soft empty hand. These three are uses of force that do not require paperwork, because you're not likely to harm somebody doing any of these techniques. Maybe psychologically, but not by much. They're not going to go away with PTSD, that's what I'm saying. Next up, we have pepper spray. Obviously, this one's going to require paperwork, because you need to be able to justify your reasoning in a court of law as to why you used it. And we went over a whole lot of stuff in training. In fact, we got a case study that I had a unique answer for. But pepper spray is basically the use of a chemical agent, in this case pepper spray, to gain control over a situation. But the thing about and we actually had a whole day, well, not a day, we had a part of class dedicated to how and when to use pepper spray. This seems like very important information I need to know, because I'm going to be carrying it around on me. So with that, I'm actually going to segue into the case study that me and my group got. Basically, it said that we were trying to transport an offender who was getting agitated and actually got loose they had restraints on them, but they managed to they managed to get out of our grip. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry, my learning disability is showing a little bit. So we were asked what level of force we were supposed to be using, and I specifically stated psychological, verbal, and hard open hand, hard empty hand. I'll get into what hard empty hand means here in a second. But the instructor actually asked, well, why didn't you just use your pepper spray? It's like, well, first off, chances are if they're trying to get away from us, pepper spray is not going to be effective because you want to hit them in the face. And 2 is a little problem that not a whole lot of people are aware of. You can actually be convicted of using an excessive use of force with pepper spray if the target is actually too close to you. I think the safe distance is like 36 inches away or something like that, but like roughly 3 feet or so away. If they literally just got out of your hand and turned around and you shoot them in the face with pepper spray, you actually have the potential to cause serious damage, and that would be an excessive use of force, which is why I actually advocated for the hard, empty hand instead of pepper spray, because you're too close. The instructor actually liked my answer on that, so kudos to me, I guess. But if you got some guy who is more than 36 inches away from you, who is holding a knife or something like that, then yes, pepper spray would actually be considered a reasonable use of force. I'm not telling you where to get pepper spray, and I'm not telling you how to use the pepper spray. Although in the future, I know a couple of people now who want to go get pepper sprayed with me, so that might happen in the future. Subscribe for more. Anyways, we're going to talk about hard, empty hand. This is laying hands on an offender who is not cooperative. This could range from employing pressure points, using various different holding techniques, to punching and kicking. Although punching and kicking could actually turn into an intermediate use of force. Which, by the way, intermediate use of force would be using things like environmental weapons, or basically it's a use of force that is heavy enough to cause severe permanent injury, possibly death. So high chance of severe injury and a low chance of death. And then there's obviously deadly use of force, which is rarely going to be used. And obviously this is any use of force that can kill somebody. Is very likely to kill somebody. There are very, very, very few instances where you'll use this. For instance, if somebody's really close to you and they have a weapon, yeah, chances are you might be able to use a deadly use of force. But this is probably not going to come up in my line of work, thankfully. And like I said, we had a whole day on pepper spray, wrist restraints, and other things like that. Restraints was the fun thing because it involves using handcuffs. And my 12-year-old brain just went wild. So yeah, I now know how to properly use handcuffs. So that's a thing. And we got to practice using real handcuffs, not the fuzzy ones. And yes, we actually had to practice by putting handcuffs on each other. And there's a very specific way you have to do it, and I'm pretty sure I can't tell you how. And these are the nice double locking ones. So as soon as you lock them, you double lock it, which means that you can't push yourself out of the handcuffs. They close, but they don't open. But the double lock actually prevents them from closing any further than what you've already set it to. We also learned about Riot Control, which was fun, and we watched some pretty grisly videos that were involved with that, because typically in a riot situation, there's probably going to be deadly uses of force and intermediate uses of force. And there were some interesting factoids, like, for instance, riots aren't just, a chaotic mess. There's usually a goal in mind with a riot. We also learned about the various different gangs that are within the prison, which was fun. We also learned how to write conduct violations and learned about constitutional law, which was actually hugely beneficial to me. It's really great to know, where that we're not only just defending our own personal rights as correctional officers, but we're also defending the rights of the offenders as well. So I learned all about the different ways that their constitutional rights are protected, not just from use of force, but in the context of religion, due process, and all that stuff. We also learned about doing pat searches and cell searches. Pat searches kind of got awkward, but you have to do the pat searches in a particular way, and you can only, as a male, I can only do pat searches on other men for obvious reasons. And on certain body parts, you don't use the front of your hand. You actually use the back of your hand, because Priya. Very rarely will I actually have to perform a pat or strip search on a female offender. We also spent an entire day on CPR, first aid, and AED training, which was fun. I mean, CPR is pretty useful, by the way. If you don't know CPR, yeah, you should get certified to do so. And also, just learn how. Just do it. Really, the only hard thing about performing CPR is the stress. Aside from that, it's not that hard. You can actually do chest compression only CPR without the rescue breaths, and that's actually acceptable. Also, when you get certified, I actually found out that you can actually buy the full face sealable masks online that don't rebreathe. So basically, you put these masks over the patient's face and you breathe into it, and it only lets air go through it, but it won't let air come back out, which is really useful because typically when you force air down somebody's throat, sometimes you're sending it into their stomach, which means that when they wake up, there's a good chance they're gonna vomit. Really, the only downside to having these is that you actually have to crack the seal to let the air out. But yeah, we spent like literally half of the day was just learning CPR on both adults and children. And then we had first aid class, which was insanely funny. When the hell in Missouri am I ever going to have to know how to treat somebody's jellyfish stings? In a prison. What prison actually has jellyfish in it? I need to know this now. More useful stuff included how to treat snake bites, spider bites, and things like that, as well as wound treatment and stuff and that type of stuff. I mean, I guess it's great to know if I'm out in public. The only downside to knowing all this is now when somebody drops dead in the middle of a Walmart parking lot and I see it, I guess I should help now. On the bright side, these are all skills that I've known how to use for a while because I was a lifeguard for about a year. So a good chunk of this I already knew. It's a little bit different because when you're trained to be a lifeguard, you're expected to have other people around you helping. At least 6 people, possibly more, are gonna pop out of the woodwork as soon as you blow that whistle for a severe life-threatening emergency. And I've had to do that a couple of times. It was scary versus out in public or in a prison where it might just be you for a long time. On the bright side, you have medical staff literally right there ready to help you. Well, not right there. It's probably going to take them 5 to 10 minutes to get to you, but they're right there. Some other interesting facts that I learned in prison this week. Well, not at prison, but you know what I'm talking about. I met a guy who's into D&D who is now talking to me. That's interesting. So I made some new friends. I also managed to confuse somebody into thinking that I actually went to college for psychology because I knew a lot of the psychological aspects of the job. And I also learned that somebody in my class knows how to perform CPR on dogs. That was neat. Also, interesting little tidbit. Normally when you perform CPR on an adult, you're supposed to put 2 fingers underneath the chin and pull the head back with one hand on the top of the head. And you're supposed to hold the mouth open and pinch the nose shut so that you can direct air down the throat and not have it come out through the nose. Well, when you're performing on an infant, the nose and mouth are too close together, so the only way to ensure that all the air goes down into the infant's body is to actually just swallow their whole face, nose and all. So yeah, you have to put your whole mouth over the baby's nose and mouth if you're performing CPR on an infant. That was a fun fact to learn. That's all I got for you this week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and let me know if there's anything you want me to talk about that I've discussed here in its own separate video. Like I said, I'm not going to get into how to use defensive tactics or pepper spray. I am not certified to teach those classes, so I'm not going to be doing that. If you want to learn about self-defense, go talk to somebody who knows all about that. I am not that person. But if you want to learn more about other stuff, leave it in the comment section down below or over on our Discord server, which will be in the description down below. And if you want to support the channel, there will be links in the description for Ko-fi and Patreon for one-time donations and monthly donations, respectively. I'm going to go and get some breakfast because I am starving, but for now, thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoyed it, feel free to show me some love down below by hitting the like button, and don't forget to check out the annotations for more videos. And I will see you in the next video.